Hey guys! So I'm Helena and today we're gonna go into our last episode before the ring. Dun dun dun. You know what I mean. So next week we're gonna start with the ring, which is this, I think it's about 17 hours total without intermission. We're gonna go into this from next week on. It's got 4 parts, so we're gonna go with it for 4 weeks. And I would really advise you, if you want to watch this, just saying this now, if you want to watch the ring or parts of the ring, begin with the beginning. It's never been as important as with that. There's basically no time for me to go every single person with every video, because there's a lot. So I may just begin by saying Brunhilde is sleeping on a rock and Siegfried has awoken her. And if you have not seen like the previous parts, you may not, this is an absurd example. Anyway, if you've not seen the stuff before, you might be completely out of order. Let's be honest. So we're going to start next week with the ring, which is gonna be cool, and it's the basis, even though they always deny it, but it's very, very similar to Game of Thrones, which we're gonna go exactly into in the second week, because there's a lot of parallels to Game of Thrones in the second week in the Valkyrie. And there's also, I mean, the Ring of the Nibelung, Lord of the Rings, you get it. It's the same concept of rings. And they do a lot of similar stuff, if I may say so. But anyway, this is next week, but today we're going to go into the only work of Richard Wagner that's actually a comedy. It is meant to be a comedy. It's kind of the comedic version, I would almost say, of Tannhäuser, which was the second week and which hardly anyone watched, so never mind. But it's got a similar concept and nobody dies. Isn't this wonderful? There's no one who dies and it's a comedy and there's not really that much of an antagonist. Really, when you compare it to other antagonists, this is really not such a big deal. Let's be honest. And so Mastersingers is such a jewel. It's mostly underrated because it is not a comedy, because it's not a tragedy, because it's just lowbrow fun, if I may say it like this. But yeah, we should hop into that, and for that I'm like gonna be really nerdy and getting into my like middle-aged outfit to feel on theme, which is kind of stupid because I'm still maquillaged, so it's kind of stupid. But anyway, gonna be back in a second in my proper stuff. So if you want to change yourself too while we go through this, then just pause it at this point and watch on later. See you in a second. So, I changed, obviously. You see it with the with the wings, kind of. I know it's not called wings, but it kind of makes me feel like some. So you can't really see like my whole outfit, which is okay. But I thought for this one, I was gonna step into my own little Middle Ages dream, which is absolutely not good with those glasses. So no, we leave them on. It's always a bit weird seeing me without them, kind of. So we're just gonna leave it like this. So I have to start this off by explaining a few simple things about this one, the Mastersingers of Nuremberg. First of all, Nuremberg is a city. It's in northern Bavaria. It's in Franconia to be exact. Franconia is a part of Bavaria. Never trust a Franconian if he says he's not part of Bavaria, because they don't like us and we don't like them, but they're still part of us. So Nuremberg, also if you like learn a few things about the Third Reich, you know this city. But this was obviously before it. So, Mastersingers of Nuremberg. This is, I wanna be able to explain this as understandable for today as possible. So the Mastersingers of Nuremberg, or the Mastersingers in general, this is kind of like a club. Let's say it like this. They're a club. They've got very, very, very specific rules on how to sing. So if you want to be part of their club, if you want to be a master singer, you have to be able to memorize this whole stack of rules, which are really, really, I don't know, in-depth, very eccentric, very minimalistic. And by the way, this is only this is also the only work where there's coloraturas in this work. So this is not like the usual Wagner work where it's just straightforward singing, but in this case it's really very, very coloraturaic. You know what I mean. Anyway, so there is this club. They've got these really elaborate rules. There's also like the part about like what you do when you end the phrase on this, when you end the phrase on that. And for it to be a master singer, you have to have a poem of your own. You have to have composed a song with the words of that poem and then have sung it correctly with the rules. Okay? Don't forget this. This is really vital for the whole story. So there is obviously, because it's a club, there's a lot of master singers. A lot. So we're not going to go in depth with all these names. We're just going to say 3. Okay? So of the master singers, there's first of all, who's the most famous one, who's also in Germany the most famous one, who's called Sachs. So he basically makes footwear, and we're talking about the Middle Ages, so we're talking about this kind of shoemaking. So he is kind of, he's this old wiser man. He's really in control of his feelings. He's really good at controlling himself, I would say. And why that is, I'm gonna explain to you later. The second one is called Veit Pogner. So Pogner for us. He's not really interesting for the story himself, but he is the father of a girl named Eva. Yes, the third E role. Which means that we're through with these girls. We've had Elisabeth, we've had Elsa, we've had Eva. So 3 E roles, 3 sopranos, we're through. So Eva is his daughter, and obviously you know where we're going with this. He's gonna be better at being father of the year than there are others, but still not the best. Anyway. And the third one that we're talking about is called Beckmesser. So Beckmesser is basically, he's the antagonist, but he's just, I'm sorry for him. He really thinks he's the right guy for marrying Eva, which is not the case, let's be honest. So he is kind of this whole, you know, the type, like this, he's really stuck on paragraphs, so he's really like, oh, but in the rule there was this and there was that and there was, you know where we're going with this. And he is what is called a merker in this club. And if you don't know what a merker is, it's very, very simple. There's no similar word to this in modern German, but there is one in English, because it's simple. He's a marker. Every time that someone sings and he hears a fault in the singing, he's got his blackboard, he's got his chalk, and he's gonna scratch the chalk over the blackboard for a fault, basically, which he does, of course, in a meticulous way, let's be honest. So these are the three Mastersingers who are important for this story. Then Hans Sachs, who's the shoemaker, he has a shoemaker in training who's called David. And Ava, who we talked about, she's the daughter of Veit Pogner. Whole soprano situation, you know the drill. She has a nurse called Magdalene. So Magdalene and David are kind of the second pair in this way. They are the comedic pair, which is also something that's normally not with Wagner, because he doesn't really have that second couple who's comedic. It's not a thing for him. But you might also think, wait, the guy is in training, so he must be very young. And the other one's a nurse, so she must be very old. How does this... And the thing is, I don't know. Normally, since no one cares about how old characters are in the story, they're about the same age. So David is probably in training for a very long time in this case. Anyway, they're the comedic couple. Let's be honest. And this is, by the way, also, for me as a lover of mezzo-sopranos, this is the only time where a mezzo-soprano gets her guy and is happy at the end. Oh, I spoiled this. Anyway, this is the only time she never gets the guy. The mezzo-soprano never gets the guy. Mary from The Flying Dutchman, she gets heartbroken when the Flying Dutchman falls in love with her kid, basically. And then Venus gets heartbroken because Tannhäuser doesn't love her anymore. And Ortrud gets heartbroken because they kill off her husband. And Brangäne didn't even have a husband or a guy or whatever it is in the first place. So, really, Magdalene is really lucky. By the way, the Mastersingers of Nuremberg is a piece that is this year in Bayreuth at the festival. This is the premiere. They have this really big premiere every year where all these politicians come, even though they don't care about Wagner, but they come anyway because they don't have to pay for their tickets. So for this year, it's this. I don't go there this year because first of all, it gets broadcast, and second of all, I don't know the production yet. So I don't know if I like it. And I'm very, very picky about my productions. I don't like it to be that modern. So I'm kind of keeping away from this because tickets are still very expensive, let's be honest. Not as expensive as other festivals like Coachella, but still expensive. So I'm not going there, but it's going to be broadcast on TV, so I'm going to watch it. Anyway, so we've got basically all of the main characters through, except, of course, the guy we're all talking about is called Walter, or Walter in your case. So Walter is a knight. I don't know, he wanted to live in Nuremberg, so now he does. And of course he fell in love with Ava. So we start off after the beautiful, beautiful overture. We start off with Walter basically being outside a church. The mass is going on in the church. Ava is in there and he's waiting for her to come out. And he basically says, okay, girl, I'm in love with you. I want you. Where is this going? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I love you too. But I don't know whether this is something that can be possible. And of course, Magdalene, being the comedic interlude, she kind of always disrupts them. But then she herself gets a bit drawn off because David comes and she's this whole David situation. You get the drill. She sees her guy and the kid is forgotten and the knight. So basically they say, we know that there's something coming, there's a singing contest coming, and we think that Ava is gonna be the prize for this singing contest. And so Walter, if you want to be her guy, her husband, then you have to be a master singer and you have to win this contest. And Walter's like, hey, yeah. I'm so sorry. He's like, hell yeah, this is something I'm gonna do this afternoon. I'm just gonna do this. And Magdalene is like, oh, David, you're gonna be so sweet, so kind. You're also, you know everything about the Mastersingers. You're gonna tell him all the rules, don't you? And David's like, oh, yeah, I love you. And she's like, I'm gonna repay you for everything. And everyone's like, repay you? Okay. Later we know that it's just a basket of something to eat. So don't think what I thought the first time I heard those words. But anyway, so David basically begins to tell this whole monologue of what he's allowed to do. And this is the first part. So this whole thing is just rules. You can stop here and get your, I don't know, German translation app out. This is the first part. And then there's the beginning at the bottom. And there's the second part. And it basically goes on and on about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Okay, so this is all through, and then the Mastersingers come. So they have got this really long table, which they built in the meantime while David had his whole soliloquy going on. And they are all sitting down and say, okay, good, what are we gonna do today? Tomorrow is Johannistag, which was at the time a celebratory day. They say, what are we gonna do today? And Veit is he's standing up, he's saying, guys, I'm a rich guy, but I didn't know what I should put in for tomorrow's celebration. But I thought long and hard, and I think I'm gonna have my only child, Ava, as a prize for this singing contest. And everyone's like, hey, woo, this is going on. But Pogner says, and this is why he's still in running for Father of the Year. He says, but she still gets to choose ultimately. And they're like, what? She's gonna get to choose? Where are we, the 21st century? She's not gonna get to choose who she's gonna marry. Where are we? Like all this commotion going on. And then Veit Pogner's like, we will just make it like this. She will have to marry the guy who wins. And if she does not want the guy who wins, then she has to be like a nun, like she will never marry. Either she marries this guy or she will never marry. And they're like, no, this is unacceptable. This is no. If we're gonna make this a contest, we want the prize. No. Yeah. It's really, I mean, for everyone who thinks patriarchy is today at its highest, watch this. And then we're gonna talk about patriarchy. And then Sachs comes, and as I know, he's this cool guy. He says, yeah, you know what, I think for this one time we should also have the folk decide who's gonna be the winner of this. Because I think we've flown too close to the sun, kind of. We're like this elite group, and everyone knows that we're the elite, and we lost the connection to the folks. So we should just say no, basically. We should just have the folk decide with us. And then there's, of course, no, the folks, they don't know. They have no idea what we're talking about. They don't know the rules. This is no way. This, And then Sachs says, okay, good, I'm taking it back. If the girl can decide for herself. And then they're so, I don't know, so still in commotion because this horrible thing that the folk should decide alongside the singers, that they say, okay, good, the girl can say no to the guy if she doesn't want, but she still has to be a nun. But this is kind of one of the best outcomes that has ever been in such a thing, let's be honest, like probably best possible scenario for her. Anyway, then they say, okay, there's this new guy, Walter, he wants to sing. He wants to be here. He wants to be a part of us. He wants to sing. And they say, okay, who has been your master? And he says, Walter von der Vogelweide, which is, by the way, who was one of the singers in Tannhäuser. So he's one of the, yes, love is such a theoretical thing, singing up to your woman in the tower thing. So we already know this guy. And Walter says, this would be something for me. He was my master. And they say, but he's dead. And you, like, how did you learn to sing? And he says, through books and all. And ultimately, of course, they let him sing. And he fails, because there's so many rules that, of course, Walter von der Vogelweide could have never known. And Walter, he fails miserably. Let's be real. And there's always the marker. He's standing behind his little curtain with his little blackboard, with his chalk in hand, like, this is not as loud as it is on stage. Obviously, it has to be very loud because everyone has to hear it. So he gets basically thrown out. And I don't know whether this is now or whether this was before Walter sung, but Beckmesser knows exactly, like the antagonist guy, he knows exactly that his only real competition in the Mastersingers for Ava's hand is Hans Sachs. And he says, oh, Hans Sachs, are you gonna be in the competition as well? Like, you're a widower, or you have never been married, and I'm a widower, so we could be in on this. And Hans Sachs said, yeah, no, I think this should be a younger man's game than the two of us. And Beckmesser's like, what? I'm young, I'm only, I don't know, 70? You know the means of this whole thing. So this is basically the end of Act 1. So there's really a lot of, all the Mastersinger scenes are really, really long and are really meticulous. So, second act. So it's basically they are having everything for Johannistag. It's later in the evening, and Magdalene comes out and goes with her little basket. She goes to David and says, oh, how did everything go? Is he now a Mastersinger? Da, 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 da. And he says, no, unfortunately he failed. And she's like, what? He failed? I'm so out of here. Give me that basket back. And storms off. So Hans Sachs is a bit, David is a bit like, what? Just because he wasn't good, does that mean I don't get dinner? This is mean. Anyway, of course Ava gets to know this, and this is one of the creepy scenes, because obviously if Walter isn't in for it anymore, then Beckmesser will be the only contestant, and she doesn't like Beckmesser. Who does? So she goes to Hans Sachs and says, hey, you've always been like a father to me. And they have this kind of father-daughter like, but also flirty situation going on, which is a bit weird. And like really weird, not Rachel Zegler and Snow White saying Snow White original was weird, but this is really weird. And she's basically like, oh, come on, can't you compete for my hand in marriage? Because this would really help me so much. And he's honestly really thinking about it, which does not make this any easier. But anyway, they kind of say they think about it. Okay. And she goes back to her room or something. But on the way there, she gets held up by Walter, and they kind of have this walk and kind of sit on the front of the stage, obviously not in with the orchestra, but very near the orchestra in front, and just so that no one can see them from the street that is basically momentarily on stage. And then Beckmesser comes because he thinks he is the greatest guy in the world, and he's got his lute with him, and he's got like his little song that he wants to sing Ava. And then Magdalene comes because obviously Ava's not in the house. So Magdalene comes and she has this hood situation on so that no one can see her face. Oh god, this now looks creepy with the glasses. Anyway, basically Magdalene sits down there and she disguises herself with a hood or something, and Beckmesser wants to sing. So Hans Sachs says, yeah, do you want to sing this song tomorrow? And Beckmesser's like, yeah, of course. And Hans Sachs says, yeah, why not? Shall I help you with the rules? Because I know the rules better than anyone. And Beckmesser's like, okay. I mean, we could. You could help me. But you don't need to. And Hans Sachs has this whole conflict going on, whether or not he should be the marker in this case. And I need to find this for 1 second. Yada yada yada. Duftet doch der Flieder. Oh, there's the weird scene. Tick, 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 tick. Where is it? Oh, yeah, there's this really long scene. No. Da, da, da. This is really sorry. I'm really so sorry. I should have marked this before. Ha! I should have marked this. So anyway, I do not find this at the moment. 1 second. I will find this. Give me a moment. You know what the horrible thing is? It was just 1 page over. I'm so sorry that you had to look at me like this. But anyway, the ultimate thing they can say is that Hans Sachs does not have the time to mark it down with chalk or something, so he's gonna hammer in the nails on the shoes that Beckmesser wants to wear the next day. So whenever Beckmesser makes a mistake, Hans Sachs will hammer. So I'm gonna explain this better by I'm so sorry. First of all, you had to see me going through this book, and then now you have to hear me sing. I'm so sorry. I hope I get this a bit right. So I'm gonna do this. Den Tag seh ich erscheinen, der mir wohlgefallen tut. Da fasst mein Herz sich einen guten und frischen Mut. And it goes on like this. So every time that he makes a mistake, Hans Sachs hammers on. And this is one of, if not the, and you know I love the scene in The Flying Dutchman. This is one of the, if not the, most funny scene in musical theatre history. Because you see Beckmesser grows so agitated by this, because it's so interrupting and she's going out of it. And unfortunately I can't find the DVD now that I usually have. At this point, it's, I think, from the 90s and stuff. It's from the Metropolitan Opera. And they had, I know what he's a sir. That's the most horrible thing. He's a sir and I can't remember his name. I know exactly what he looks like. Sir something. Can't remember it. Anyway, he's playing Beckmesser and he does it so well. It's absurd. It's so good. Just please listen to it, because let alone by listening to it, you can see the scene. And it's one of the scenes We don't need to understand what the song really is, because no one cares about the song, but just the hammering is so good. And I'm so sorry that I won't get to see this year, but as I said, it's really expensive. So I'm glad with like going to Lohengrin, because it's only this year, and the ring is there this year the last time. So I'm going to Lohengrin and I'm going to Rheingold and Valkyrie. So yeah, don't get to see the Mastersingers, but Katharina Wagner, if you see me, call me. Just saying. If you've got some tickets left, no, it's all right. I'm good with Rheingold and Valkyrie and Lohengrin. Anyway, you know this now, so it goes on like this. But obviously, because it's such a commotion outside, David one time wakes up and he goes to the window, which goes out on the street, and he says, like, what's going on here? What is this commotion? Why can't I sleep? And he's looking outside and sees Beckmesser with his lute. By the way, this is so horrible. He has to play the lute, has to sing, and I still don't know what his name is. Sir something. He plays the lute, he has to sing. He has to sing over the hammering of Hans Sachs, and he has got these coloraturas. So this is really, it's one of the hardest roles, I think, for men there is. But David sees him and he says, wait, what is going on here? Why is Magdalene being serenaded by this guy? No, this is not going to happen. She's my girl. Just because now she didn't want to give me her basket, that doesn't mean she's out of the game of me. Come on. And he jumps out of the window, grabs the lute of Beckmesser, and let's say the lute didn't survive it most of the time. And obviously, since there's this huge commotion, many more people come out of the houses and they're going at each other. Like, this is one of the biggest everyone against everyone fight scene, obviously without weapons and something, just with their bare fists, that there is. And it's just so funny. Why do I not remember his name? This is really annoying. Anyway. So, he was also in The Merry Widow, by the way. This doesn't help me anyway. So, this is the end of the second act. So, everyone against everyone. The lute is broken. We're out. So, this was the second act. I'm so sorry, this takes a really long time. But it will take less time because I don't find the DVD, so I can't talk about this production. But it's really original, let's say. So, third act. Johannistag, the day of the contest. Basically, we're now in Hans Sachsen's shop. And Walter comes in and he says, oh, I had this beautiful dream. And it was like this. And Walter dictates it and Hans Sachs writes it down. This is very important. Hans Sachs has a paper with the words of Walter and writes it down. And together they make a song out of this. A proper song with the proper rules for the Mastersingers contest. Okay. So everything all right, everything normal. And then obviously, like for a second, I don't know if I've got this in the right order because there's so much happening in the third act. I think this is the time when Walter leaves and Beckmesser comes with his shoes, because he's got his new shoes that Hans Sachs made, hammered on the night before, but they don't fit properly. So Beckmesser comes in and he says, oh, these don't fit properly. Oh, there's a poem of Hans Sachs. Does this mean that he will be part of the contest? And Hans Sachs is like, no, I'm not gonna be. But if you want this poem before you try to steal it, which you are currently doing, I'm gonna give it to you. And he's like, what? A poem of Hans Sachs? This is so great. You're gonna be the next marker. I'm gonna be so thankful. This is so wonderful. I'm gonna take this. Obviously, let's be real. the notes are not on this. This is not sheet music, it's just words. Just saying. Anyway, after this, it's like Walter comes back in. I really think I got this in the wrong order. Katharina Wagner, I hope she doesn't watch this. Walter comes back in, and he and Elisabeth, did I say Elisabeth? Ava. And he and Ava see each other, and they've got this sweet reunion, and it's wonderful going on. And I really think I got this in the wrong order. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. They've got a beautiful reunion. He says, I'm gonna be yours. This is wonderful. And Hans Sachs has this kind of birthing ceremony for the song that Walter wrote. This is really in the wrong order. And David and Magdalene also come by, and Hans Sachs says, yes, but for a birth and for you, David, to be the godfather of this piece, which is absurd, but never mind. David is the godfather of the piece that Walter wrote. You can't be still a shoemaker in training. So I'm gonna end your training right now, and you are a proper shoemaker, which means that he's allowed to marry. And obviously they've got all this sweet thing. Ava is like, oh wonderful, maybe we've got a chance to get married, and Walter is, oh wonderful, we've got a chance to get married, and Magdalene is like, well, we're gonna get married, and David's like, whoa, we're gonna get married. And Hans Sachs is completely out of order, but he has, and this is really stupid. I should have, wonderful. Oh, wonderful, I got it in the right order, I think. Anyway, he says at one point, and this is the second cross-reference, kind of, to something we already knew, is Sachs says, mein Kind, von Tristan und Isolde kenne ich ein traurig Stück. Hans Sachs war klug und wollte nichts von Herrn Markes Glück. Which roughly translates to him saying to Ava, my child, I know a sad piece of Tristan and Isolde, but Hans Sachs, so he talks of himself in the third person, Hans Sachs was clever and didn't want anything of King Mark's luck. So he basically says he's not gonna interrupt the romance between Ava and Walter as Marke interrupted the romance of Tristan and Isolde. And the funny thing is that at this point, when he sings of Tristan and Isolde, there's actually the musical theme of Tristan and Isolde, which was the last piece before this one Wagner wrote. It is in there. So they're literally playing like the leitmotif of this. So this is the last time I'm gonna need this. Anyway, so everyone's happy. Hans Sachs has this kind of fatherly being happy, although still being weirdly in love with... let's leave it. Let's leave it behind. Come on. And now we're gonna go have a change of scenery. We're in Nuremberg. We are the great place, grand place, whatever. And now we're gonna talk about the contest. Obviously, great contest. There's all the clubs coming in, the shoemakers, the lawyers, the this, the that, everyone's coming in. David has the greatest time in the world because he is dancing with various women without Magdalene in sight, which is not a good sign for the marriage. But the other guys tell him that it's not a good choice, so they like, oh, Magdalene, hey! And he's like, just saying. Anyway, contest begins. Obviously, Beckmesser begins because he thinks he's got the great ticket. He's got the golden ticket, kind of, if he was in some show. I don't know what the show was anymore, but he's kind of, he thinks he has the golden ticket. And obviously he fails miserably because he doesn't know how to use the poem properly. And then Walter comes, he has the same poem, but he has the proper music. And this is so annoying because this song gets played so often. And it's really annoying, like after the 13th time of hearing it. It's really getting annoying sometime. But anyway, obviously Walter wins. Everyone knows that Walter wins and he gets a bar. And everyone's happy! Yes! Isn't this wonderful? We had no dead people. We had a comedy. We had this great scene in the second act of the shoemaker hammering on his shoes. And no dead people again. Yes! Great! A happy mezzo-soprano who does not know that her guy has already wandered. Anyway. Isn't this wonderful? And next week we're gonna start with the ring. I want to say at this point that there are, I think, 33 personae in the ring. And of these there are 28 dead. And the 5 that survive are the ones who have to take the blame for this whole thing. Just think that. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry because this Beckmesser was so good. And I can't remember his name. It's Sir something, and he was in... This is really annoying and it's really embarrassing. I always, when I think Sir Ian McKellen, but it's obviously not him. It's just vanished out of my head. It's really embarrassing. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, hopefully, if I remember, I'm going to tell you next week his name, if I can remember it. Basically, the DVD that I watched, which is, it's a green DVD. It's wonderful, it's really, really good. It's unfortunately not on YouTube, but there are like other versions of Mastersingers, but there's none that's as good as this one, because as I said, just the shoemaking scene. I know I've said this about 30 times right now, but this is just so funny. And Sir something! This is so embarrassing. He makes this so good, and as I said, it's so difficult. I'm so sorry for him. This is, I think, it's one of the really hardest pieces, because he's got to do so many things. I know what he looks like, him and I. And it's really, really great. And if you need, like, if you had a bad day, then watch this or listen to this. I'm hopefully gonna find this on YouTube Music, obviously, like the album that I listen to all the time, which is not the same, because most of the times the DVDs that we got are not the same as the CDs that we get, which is insane. It's simply stupid, because if you have a special CD that you like and you don't get the DVD with it, this is just stupid, let's be honest. And there is one, it's just a few years back, I think. Just a few years back, and it's from Saxonia. So they made this at the Semper Opera in Dresden, and later at the festival in Salzburg, which is kind of weird because it's normally a Mozart festival, or more of the lighter stuff, which well, maybe in the Mastersingers is one of the lighter stuff, but still. Anyway, this is like really great recording, the album that I've got. Also because there's, you know her already, her name's Christa Meier. She was the Mari in my favorite version of The Flying Dutchman, which I already talked about in like episode 1. And she is playing Magdalene in this. And we're gonna stumble over her in the next few weeks, because she is my favorite Fricka. And if you don't know who Fricka is yet, and I know there's a very similar sounding word in English, and I do not wish for you to use that word. Her name is Fricka, and she's the name giver, or one of the possible name givers of the Friday. So, Fricka, like this. Christa Meier, she sings Magdalene in this, and she's really great. Again, and also one of the greatest conductors of our time. Obviously, one of the greatest Wagnerian heroes of our time. Everything. Like, this recording just has everything. As always, I'm gonna like link it all in the description below for you to listen to. I hope I'll be able to, well, the whole album and the prelude, and of course the shoemaking scene. If there is, I don't know whether this is just one track or if it's more tracks, but if it's more tracks, I'm just gonna say the first track of the shoemaking scene, and you can just hear on, basically listen on. So this was the Mastersingers of Nuremberg. Last thing before the ring next week. Yes, that was it. So I'm gonna change out of my pretty like middle-aged thing out, because I've got university this afternoon, and I don't think that my teacher would be too like too happy with me showing up in this. But never mind. So I hope you liked it. I hope this was kind of a lighter episode this once, because we had the heavy Tristan and Isolde, we have the heavy ring incoming. So just remember, there's always a comedy waiting for you if you want to. Have a nice day. Bye. See you next week with the ring. Dun dun dun. Bye.